everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Irish Wrestling Podcast. We are delighted for you to join us this week, and we are finishing this week off on a high because our guest today has to be one of the most entertaining and funniest people that we know, whether he realizes it or not. Super, super funny and super, super entertaining, and definitely kept us going over the last few years. He is an editor. He is a podcaster, he is a writer, he is a director, and not only is he a podcaster, he also helps other podcasters to build their little empire, move it forward and grow it into something spectacular. Delighted to introduce, ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Glenn Rubenstein. Glenn, how are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you both?
Flying, absolutely great, cannot complain.
Roasting.
Yeah. Feeling the heat, but it's all good. It's all good. So yeah, as mentioned, Glenn, we've a massive pop culture following in Ireland. It's huge here, you know, and like similar along the lines that we kind of take an interest in everything associated with big things. Do you know that kind of place? Indie wrestling is huge here. We love all the big promotions, but indie wrestling's taken almost it's a huge preference for the Irish fan base, isn't it? And as well as that, all the major movies, all the major games, all the major TV series, ads, you name it, we have to know the ifs, the buts, the whens, and the whys all about them. So definitely you'd be very, very welcome over here in Ireland, I'm sure, if you want to come and visit.
Hope to one day. The family's from there, so we'll make a pilgrimage at some point. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, if you ever do pop along, we'll bring you around to see the sights. Like, why not?
Absolutely.
Fabulous. So I'm sure my beautiful co-host, the one and only Booker G, 5 times, has a couple of questions for you. So I'm going to pass it over to himself.
Hit me.
Glenn, again, thanks again for coming on. Like we said, you've been in podcasting for a long time, but this in the last few weeks, you've had your 7-year anniversary with Wrestling Inc. Is that correct? You've been there
7 years. So it's very interesting. I had done radio in the past. I'd done some television when I was a teenage video game journalist, but I've really been on the business side of podcasting for a little over 13 years now. And just through, sheer coincidence of events, I'd been doing some business with the Wrestling Inc. podcast and Sean Ross Sapp. He left to go to Fightful. Sean put me in touch with Raj. I had a business call with Raj about advertising. And before you know it, he was asking if I wanted to guest on the podcast. And then 5 minutes after I finished that, he asked me if I wanted to host. So it just kind of goes to show you never know where things are going to lead. And here we are 7 years later, multitude of co-hosts later. Back then it was just Raw, SmackDown that was being covered weekly, and now Raw, SmackDown, NXT, AEW. I'm still doing the NXT and SmackDown pods, but it's amazing just to see how Wrestling Inc. has grown over the years, and I've been thrilled to be a part of that journey.
Excellent. And it was it Wrestling that got you back into wrestling? Like, had you run out of it for a while?
Yeah, I think definitely, like a lot of kids of the 80s, at the time the first WrestleMania happened, I was very into the rock and wrestling connection. I mean, we had, Rocky III, Mr. T, Cyndi Lauper. I was a fan of Rowdy Piper, Honky Tonk Man, Hulk Hogan, all the wrestlers that we loved as kids. And then around the time Ultimate Warrior beat Hulk Hogan, I think I kind of tuned out for a while. I remember going to a friend's house, and it was literally that situation of, the big pay-per-views today. We're going to order pizzas. Everybody put in $20. And we're going to get this pay-per-view and order a bunch of pizzas. And I remember that was like my last live event that I watched for a while. Then got back in a little bit during the Attitude Era, but it was really tough enough. And the reality show of people getting into wrestling got me reinvested. Of course, I watched the original seasons. My former co-host, Matt Morgan, was on season 2. And then this last cycle that happened around 2015, 2016, I remember watching that, and I had a coworker at the time that was like, you should really check out NXT. And Bayley versus Sasha at TakeOver Brooklyn just absolutely got me reinvested in watching wrestling on a weekly basis. From there, it's a good thing my wife loves Becky Lynch, because I think that if she hadn't been so into Becky Lynch and Finn Balor and a lot of the NXT talents, I don't think I would have been able to consistently tune in every week and watch wrestling at a set time. So her and I sharing that together, going to live events, going to WrestleMania in 2016, that kind of got wrestling being a part of my life again. So during that summer when the brand split happened, when Raw and SmackDown had that roster split, that was a great time for the product. It's when I started hosting the Wrestling Inc. podcast, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Amazing. And
Wow.
with NXT, it's something that you've kept your love with, like
Oh,
regardless
absolutely.
of NXT, like even the 2.0 and right into now, it's you've never faltered away from it. Like a lot of podcasts you'd see they were all into NXT, and when NXT 2.0 came along, they all started falling off, and they stopped and they lost interest, and they were focusing on AEW. So it's good that you've kept your
NXT is very interesting. I always compare it to the sketch comedy show Saturday Night Live, in that the cast changes so frequently, and you kind of have to stick it out sometimes during the down months or down period, but it always gets better and soars to new heights. So no, I really love kind of like what NXT has become, and it's still, I think, the most entertaining show in all of professional wrestling.
Yeah,
love that.
And we know you're a big fan of Tony D. How do you think he's going to do now that he's free?
Oh yeah, Tony D is the only one for me. He's amazing.
Yeah. Well, he's out of jail now, so it's good. And although, isn't that amazing that they did this big storyline and they had it to where if Stacks won a match, Tony D wouldn't go to trial, because I think the trial of Tony D'Angelo would have been incredible television.
Beautiful, wouldn't it have been?
Yeah, so I'm bummed we didn't get that, but I think I think he and Stacks might win the tag titles, and I think now that Dominic Mysterio is NXT North American champion, I could see Tony D competing for that sooner rather than later.
I hope so. I think he deserves a singles.
Yeah.
He's, when he came into the NXT at the start, like he was one of the standouts of the new.
Oh yeah. It's such a great gimmick. And I say this all the time about professional wrestling. It's like, if your gimmick as a wrestler is like, well, I'm a really good wrestler, like you don't have a gimmick. Like everyone's a really good wrestler, or else you wouldn't be a professional wrestler.
Yeah.
Like, and I think Tony D, it's such an old school image gimmick with the Italian mafioso. I just absolutely love it. Always entertained by it. And I think, I think there's a bright future for him.
Yeah. How do you think he would do on the main roster? He wouldn't be turned into the new FBI, would he? He would be.
Well, maybe, but see, that'd be a great story. We need the informant. We need someone going undercover wearing a wire.
Yeah,
right. And that's the
thing. Don't we? We do.
Yeah, because look, wrestling, in-ring wrestling is the best it's ever been. You now have talents that grew up watching watching professional wrestling, right? Like in-ring action is great. So it really comes down to the storyline. And I always say, like, a good wrestling show should be a show about a show. It should be like watching the Muppet Show. I want to see what's going on backstage. I want to see what's going on in front of the camera. Just having in-ring athletic competitions, I can watch real sports for that.
Yeah.
I want wrestling to be about, first and foremost, entertainment, and the actual fights are just a part of that.
Yeah. It's got to be a story.
Yeah.
It's got to hook you in. Yeah.
Outside of wrestling, like originally when you started out your career, you were doing game reviews. You were with a few colleagues. How did you go from, like, leaving school, or were you in school, or is it something like
I was in school, so I wanted to, like many 14-year-olds who love video games in 1990, I wanted to make video games. And I remember having a conversation with my mom one day during a car ride where I was saying, like, I really want to make games, and okay, I'm about to go into high school. I could go through high school, I could go to college to learn how to design games. I could learn how to program on my own. Like, that's a way into the industry. And I think I had, maybe written for a school paper, or actually, what's funny is I'd sold a bunch of games through the newspaper, which I actually delivered at the time. I was a newspaper delivery boy when I was 14.
Love it.
And I'd sold a bunch of games through the newspaper, like my used Nintendo games. And I remember parents were asking my advice and calling me up and saying, what game should I get for my son? What game should, would he like? Should I rent this game or should I buy this game? So I was giving all this advice. And my mom said, why don't you write a letter to the local newspaper and say, I should write a column about video games for you, put it in your Saturday section. So I wrote like a little sample column about what's better, Nintendo or Sega or yada, yada. And the newspaper said, well, we're not going to pay you, but we will run this column every week in our paper. Yeah. So I was like, great, this is fantastic. And it was a small little paper north of San Francisco. But what was phenomenal about this is that within a few months, I was able to send that column to other newspapers, to the San Francisco paper. I was able to send it to local radio stations and say, hey, you should have me on as a guest to talk about video games. So I was doing all this when I was in school, and it actually led to me graduating early, getting my equivalency diploma and leaving high school when I was 16 because I was so busy. I wasn't really making money, but I was getting all these opportunities to do radio, TV, write for publications. You know, they would pay me a little bit, but what's actually funny about it is that the number one thing that I made money off of and that actually allowed me to buy my first like used car was when I got my license was that Nintendo sued Louis Galoob Toys over a product called the Game Genie. And what the Game Genie was, it was something that you'd plug your Nintendo cartridge in to the Game Genie and then put the Game Genie into your Nintendo Entertainment System. And you could enter all sorts of different codes. And these codes might let you jump higher, or instead of having 3 lives, you could have 10 lives. It would modify the code with these little, magic codes. And Nintendo didn't like this at all. They sued to keep this off the market. But because Louis Galoob Toys was based in the San Francisco area, somebody there had read my newspaper column and said, would you be interested in testifying in federal court as an expert witness, as an expert on video games, and giving your testimony and saying, no, this actually makes games more fun, gives your games more value, and has all these additional benefits. So I got paid a little bit of money. Actually, I found out later, like they way underpaid me because I was a teenager. But I got paid a little bit of money to, put in 100 hours prepping for this trial and testifying at this trial. And what was crazy about this was that the judge, when she released her finding for Galoob, because Galoob won and beat Nintendo, the judge actually said that, Nintendo put up all these experts testify about video games, but Galoob had a 16-year-old boy who's a Nintendo, one of their target audience, who said, no, this makes games more fun. And that was very powerful testimony. So
that's incredible.
That's a Netflix show.
Glenn, you need to be hooked up straight away.
100% a Netflix show.
Do you remember the guy who tried to buy the can? This is your Coke can, this is amazing.
Well, it's funny. So one of my childhood friends, Jeff Gerstmann, who's gone on to be a video game reviewer, he worked for Giant Bomb and now is doing his own thing. I actually got him into the business because we went to high school together. We became friends. He started tagging along with me. He and I have been doing a show that's on his Patreon called Game Boys to Men. Yeah. And it's all about our experience as teenagers and young men in the video game industry and the wacky misadventures we would get into, going to conventions and trying to buy alcohol or gamble when we were underage. So our hope is that, we've been doing this for a year now. And we started, in 1990. We just got to 1995. We just got done with 1994. And our hope is that when this is done, we're going to turn it into some sort of book or some sort of project that maybe can get adapted into something. Because we have just a lot of really interesting stories about us traveling around, unsupervised minors. And the, one story I was telling is that Nintendo, unrelated to this, Nintendo really didn't like all the nice things I was saying about Sega, and they didn't think I was giving them fair coverage. So there was a time in 1993 where a Nintendo executive flew me up and was like, oh, we want to give you this trip to Nintendo. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. What top secret things are they going to show me? What is this going to be about? And literally what happened is they flew me up, put me in a hotel. The next day, a car drove me to Nintendo. And this executive sat me down for 3 hours and just yelled at me that I was being unfair to Nintendo.
Oh my God.
Well,
yeah. They showed me nothing. I think they gave me a brief tour. They put me back in the car, back on a plane, and sent me home. And coincidentally, that executive left Nintendo like a month later and went to work for Sega. But it was like just crazy things would happen to us. Like people would be like, "Hey, do you want to come and see this video game, or do you want to do a focus group with your friends and tell us what you think about this?" There was just a lot of like wacky stuff that happened. So I'm glad to have gone through that. But, I got out of that business. I spent essentially at that time, half my life talking about video games. Like from age 14 to 28, I was one of the founding editors at GameSpot with Jeff Gerstmann. I went on to work at CNET, went on to write for like Sports Illustrated for kids and do a variety of things. But I'll tell you, if there's something that's going to make you like not have fun playing video games, it's doing it for a living or talking about it for a living. So, I kind of learned that we all know more about our hobbies than we know about our jobs, but there's a danger when your hobby becomes your job, because then it becomes work. And I always say, somewhere out there, there's someone who is a professional ice cream taster who probably gets up and hates going to work in the morning.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, I have to go eat all this ice cream.
Did you stop playing video games after that? After you?
I definitely dialed back. There's still things that I get into, maybe like once or twice a year. I mean, I was into Fortnite for a while. I think, probably for about 3 years, I was playing that every so often. It's funny though. I used to stay up late, especially during the pandemic. Where it's like, oh, I'll go on Fortnite because my wife goes to bed at a reasonable hour. I've never really been that kind of person. But I'll tell you, living in Vegas, it's a little dangerous because it's at night. It's like, oh, maybe I'll go out and play some poker tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the late night distractions make Fortnite seem a little less interesting.
They have the arcade bars now as well. You can go and just
They
play.
do have the barcades, although emulation is such an amazing and powerful thing. Where you can get these emulators and have thousands of games at your fingertips. But what's crazy about that is you get those games and you set them up and you'll go through and you'll play them, but after a while it kind of becomes like, okay, I'm loading this when I'm bored, I'm loading this when I'm bored. It's rare to find something that you really want to invest time in. When Jeff Gerstmann and I started doing the podcast, we were talking about the game Miner 2049er, which was one of the first games for Atari 2600 and 800 and 400 computers. Like that was a game that as a kid, I remember playing and my family playing, and we could never beat that. So a few months ago, I probably spent 3 or 4 late nights, and I still am not able to beat that game. Level 10 on that game is impossible. And I think that's like a bucket list achievement that I want to do before I die is finally finish Miner 2049er because it's so challenging. It's such an old game. There's no cheat codes for it, and you have to start back at the beginning. I was able to use through emulation, you could save your game and reload your game. So at least I can get to the last level and then keep reloading it. But the problem is, you get one life. And if the slightest thing hits you, you die. So it's a very challenging title,
Amazing.
I think you guys been on a roller coaster.
I'm definitely if you're on Patreon, people sign up to that.
Yeah.
You need to hear.
Yeah, just look for Jeff Gerstmann's Patreon. It's been good. And we do these episodes and it's so funny. You guys will appreciate this as fans of Wrestling Inc. because sometimes people will comment and say like, this is a podcast about video games. Glenn's going off topic a lot. And I'm like, oh, they've never listened to me do a podcast before, clearly. Because we'll do these 3-hour episodes and it'll start with, we were talking about one the other night. We were talking about the ESRB and the rating of video games. And we're talking about, 1993 and 94. So for us taking this trip down memory lane, it's not just what games were you playing at the time. It's like, what music were you listening to? What movies were you listening to? What, were you dating someone back then? Like what was going on in your life? And I think that's so fun to be able to delve into that and like kind of have those memories. And Jeff Gerstmann and I have been talking about it. Like we started doing this podcast thinking it would be fun and it would be like, oh, remember this game, remember this game. And instead it's talking about like, what was it like the first time you got fired from a job? What was it like, when you had your first relationship and at the time, like your girlfriend wasn't okay with you going out and doing all these things and she was back at home. Like it's been almost like therapy. Just to have these discussions and revisit all these emotions we had as young men.
Amazing. Oh my God.
Yeah, I definitely want to see that.
I think so too. I think it needs to be a Netflix show. Unbelievable. I would watch it on repeat.
From gaming expert, you went into podcast advertising expert. You're recognized worldwide as an expert in podcast advertising. How did you end up going into that?
So I had a little bit of a detour on YouTube and was doing content for YouTube, but fictional content for YouTube. I worked on a series called Lonely Girl 15 that was one of the first narrative fiction series on YouTube back in 2006 and 2007. And the problem then was that, we could make all this content, we could do it on a shoestring budget, but there was just no money to be made. We sold a sponsorship. It was actually the first YouTube sponsorship ever sold that I co-wrote the episode, which was with Hershey's Icebreakers Gum. And they paid us, I think it was like $10,000 to feature Icebreakers Gum in a storyline, right? So we wrote this little exchange between the characters. But aside from that, like the money wasn't really coming in. So I left Lonely Girl 15. I tried doing some other series, but I couldn't figure out how to get it paid for. And at the time, podcasting had really taken off. And I remembered back when I did radio, I worked with a gentleman named Leo Laporte, who was like one of the original technology radio guys. Like he did a show called The Tech Guy where people would call in and be like, I can't get my CD-ROM to work. How do I do this? So I knew Leo, and Leo had since then gone on to Tech TV, and he started a podcast network called Twit, This Week in Tech. And it just so happened Leo and I still lived in the same town. So I knew I wanted to get into podcasting, and similar to how I'd gotten into journalism and everything else, I knew I could just do something on my own, but I kind of wanted to play the connections I had. So I hadn't seen Leo in 10 years at this time. And I remember at the time, I don't even think Leo knows this story, but Foursquare was still big. I don't know if you all remember Foursquare, where you check into places you went.
Yeah.
And so I would go downtown on a Friday. I knew Leo's broadcast schedule. I was like, I need to run into Leo. So I knew his broadcast schedule. I knew he had Fridays off. So I followed Leo on Foursquare, and it would be like, oh, just got a coffee, just got my haircut. And I would always miss him. I would always see he wasn't place. I was like, I don't want to follow him. So I was downtown one day getting coffee, and yeah, he just gotten a haircut. And I was like, okay, I'm going to just go hang out outside there to run into Leo. And I did, and he said, oh, you should come by and we should talk about doing a video game podcast. I didn't have the heart to tell Leo I hadn't really played a video game in 5 years. But I was like, sure, because I wanted to get my foot in the door. And this was during, 2010. It was still not a great time economically for the world. And I just needed something going on to kind of to reshine my star a little bit. And so I came in under the guise of doing a video game podcast. We tried doing a few iterations there, but it just didn't really catch on. And what's funny is I was actually hosting a show. This is before Twitch was a thing. I was actually for a while hosting a show where we would just play games, and people would just watch us play games against each other. We would play, computer games. We would just play Street Fighter, against each other. But again, they couldn't figure out how to monetize it. So I remember one day I was in a meeting with the CEO of the company and Leo, and we were talking about why the latest video game show hadn't done well. And I just figured I had nothing to lose. So I was just saying, like, look, I've noticed that you do this, but you don't do this. I've noticed that you promote when the show's live, but you don't promote the downloads, like just all these ideas that I had. And the CEO after the meeting said, wow, you've really thought about this, and you've got some, marketing sense. She said, write me a list of all your ideas. So I sent her a crazy email that night with like, here's 20 things I would do to market your network differently. And she had me come in and hired me hourly to just be a marketing consultant, and then made me full-time as the director of marketing. So I was doing that for the network. But then what's crazy is one day she was talking about, oh, ad sales, the money could be really good, but you have to, it's kind of tough because you have to figure out how to get people to buy ads on podcasts. And let me tell you something, back in the year 2010, 2011, no one was buying ads on podcasts. It was still, it was like Squarespace and GoDaddy, and it was no one else. So I was always curious of sales. People always told me I'd be good in sales. And I was like, oh, I don't want to be a sales guy. That sounds so awful. But I remember telling my boss, I was like, well, I'm still the director of marketing. I'm still want to do all the marketing stuff, but I'll try my hand at sales. And it just so happened that I kind of started from scratch and realized that I had to educate people. So I got really good at educating people about podcast advertising and how it worked and why it worked and the best practices. And I found that I was pretty good at it. In fact, that really became my passion. It was funny for the last year or two, like I didn't really want to even do my marketing job there. I just wanted to focus on sales because I was having so much success with it. And then my clients were asking me, can you do this on other networks? Can you help us with things? So yeah, it was at the beginning of 2016 when I left This Week in Tech. I left Twit, found my own podcast ad agency. Originally it was just me. I had a couple people help me here and there, but then my wife came on to join me full time in 2019. And yeah, now I've got, now we're a team of 7 or 8. So that are running like this full-time business. So it's been an interesting transition to go from being a content creator to in the business side.
Fantastic, isn't it? It's riveting. I could listen to it all day. It's just fascinating. It really is. I think it's amazing. What a journey.
What would you say is the main point for podcasters for advertising? What are the main thing they should be doing?
I mean, it really comes down to engagement, right? And you guys have seen me do ads on the Wrestling Inc. podcast. And I think that when it's done well, like one of our clients for a long time has been Blue Chew. And I remember on, the Wrestling Inc. podcast, I would do the ads for Blue Chew. And one time I ate a Blue Chew during the ad, or we would talk about it, or I would tell some story and then Matt would get embarrassed and like turn his camera off because you don't want to be associated with it. Or one of our clients, like Magic Spoon, great example. So like Matt had the cereal, I had the cereal, and Matt and I were talking about it and we're like, this is really good. Normally healthy things are awful, but we would start talking about these stories and these memories. And I think for podcasters that want to monetize, the key is like figure out how to take whatever you're talking about. Like your audience can tell when you're faking it. So you really have to find a way to make it authentic and meaningful and relevant to them. And so the best podcast ads and the best YouTube ads are that. It's not somebody saying like, hey, this episode's brought to you by so-and-so and check this out. Have you ever had this problem, or we can solve this? Instead, it's talking, with Magic Spoon, I would go to Matt and be like, hey man, remember breakfast cereal when you were a kid? And remember how like your parents would always insist upon buying the 3 things, but you'd go to that friend's house and maybe, they would have different cereal and you'd be so excited because you're like, I never get Apple Jacks at home. Now I get to try these. Or better yet, you would be like on a school trip somewhere and they'd have all those little boxes of cereal and you'd be like, I'm going to try all the different little boxes I can, and it's like Magic Spoon recreates that feeling because they have all the flavors of your favorite childhood cereals. So I think that you have to kind of find a way to make it feel organic and meaningful for your audience. And that's what I'm in the business of. So now, I do podcast ads for advertisers on my podcast, but at the same time, like our agency is really about just finding these opportunities where we can figure out, these are the hosts that can get people excited about our products. And it's great because, I work with 25 different clients. So it's like I get to have my hand in 25 different businesses and sell all these different things. And, no 2 days are the same. So it's very exciting. And I love that I get to work with all these different podcasters and YouTube hosts. It's funny living in Vegas because I'll open up a list or calendar of shows and it's like, oh, Penn and Teller are playing. Oh, we've worked with Penn Jillette's podcast before. Oh, Tim Dillon's in town. We work with his podcast. It's great to just see all these names and get to work with all these different personalities. It's a lot of fun.
Was that one of the reasons for moving out to Vegas? Was there better opportunities there? Or?
No, I think it was that, we were in Northern California, which is a very high cost of living place to live. We were in a teensy condo that was nice, but we had no backyard to speak of. And it's myself, my wife, and our 5 cats. So I felt like we were running out of space, and we just were thinking about this was during the pandemic. We were like, maybe it's time for a change. And what's funny, this is like the most random way that we had this idea. We were watching Song Exploder on Netflix, and they had an episode about the Killers, who are from Las Vegas, and they were talking about growing up in Vegas, and they were talking about like, well, there's Las Vegas, the tourists see, and then there's the rest of the city, and that kind of took us down a rabbit hole. So we said, oh my God, I wonder what it's actually like to live in Las Vegas. We know the Strip, we've been to the Strip, but what's it like being in the rest of Las Vegas? And we started researching it, and we started watching Las Vegas YouTube. I don't know if you know this. Yeah. There are YouTubers. There are some YouTubers that just have channels where they just play slot machines, but there's some YouTubers that we love, like Pompsy or Travel Ruby, where they'll go and stay in different hotels and just talk about this is what the pool is like, this is what the buffet is like. And so I think we like the idea of moving someplace that we could find a neighborhood that would be quiet when we just wanted to be at home, because we're very much homebodies and we didn't go out much at all during COVID. But when we did want to go out again, we liked the idea of being 10 or 15 minutes away from some really entertaining and exciting options. And the funny thing we realized is that everybody we know seems to travel to Vegas at least once every few years. So I think part of the idea was that if we are here, I was like, I bet you we will see everyone we know more being here than we do anywhere else, because they're always going to be here at some point, whether it's for a convention, whether it's for a trip, or maybe they just want to come out here. And I think being a local in Vegas, I'm still tickled by a lot of it. I like the random weird things that happen. I like that they have these discounts and free tickets for locals. So, last week, one day at 3, we were like, hey, let's take off work. Do you want to go see Carrot Top tonight? That sounds kind of strange. Let's go do that. That we can just do random things. Or that I can go out and just have these random, I've met some of the most interesting personalities and characters so far, just playing in the different poker rooms and being in the different casinos. I'm still very entertained by it, but granted, that could change in a year or two. I could just be absolutely sick of it. But for now, like, it has been a lot of fun, and I'm really looking forward to the next big WWE or AEW event here, because it's the same thing, right? It's like everybody comes into town, and then I like that I can just go and visit people, and then I could just come home and sleep in my own bed.
Amazing.
You know?
One final question about Vegas before we go on to the quiz.
Yeah, please.
What's the Sphere like? Have you gone to see?
The Sphere is incredible.
Yeah.
I thought the Sphere was going to be so dumb. I was like, oh, it's just a big light up ball on the strip. But oh my God, does it look cool? We went the other day just out to brunch, and we were just looking at it during the daytime. Like, this really looks amazing. Just this big light up orb that's on the strip. And I know U2 is playing there this fall, so we're going to try and get tickets to go to that. But yeah, I think the Sphere is a welcome addition to the strip, and it's just neat just to have yet another thing, right? That's the great thing about this city, is that people just throw crazy money at stuff, and you know, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but hey, it's free for us to look at, so we're going to enjoy it.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. It's just, as you say, it's just stuff pops up everywhere all the time, doesn't it? And they just try to refresh it with new things all the time, and you're just in awe sometimes, really, literally just in awe. It's
probably
phenomenal,
completely unrecognizable strip to what it was maybe 20
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I was so my wife and I talk about that a lot. It was like, oh, remember when the MGM Grand was the new hot hotel? You know, it's like things fade quickly, but I get it, and I get why this is a bad town for some people. Like, if you like gambling or drinking or partying too much, like, this is probably a terrible place to live. You know, and I kind of had to learn that a little bit, at least with just going out, where it's like, okay, it's good to go out once a week. Like, I shouldn't be going out every night.
Yeah.
You know, that's just not healthy.
Not in Vegas anyway, even in a normal town, but in Vegas. Whoa.
But here it's so easy though, right? It's like, 'cause there's always something going on. There's always something going on. And yeah, I think it's fun. I think, you know, if I didn't have everything that I'm doing right now, I would absolutely be starting like a Vegas YouTube channel. But I've thought about it. Like, I wouldn't be doing the like, oh, we're at the Bellagio, or oh, we're at Resorts World. Like, I would be doing like dirty Vegas, like dirty old. Like, we're at Jerry's Nugget, you know, like we're going to just all the dives, all the places nobody goes to, because that's what I am just enamored with, is just seeing like the real like old Vegas that still exists.
Yeah, essentially, because that builds the character of the whole place, I'd imagine, initially. You know, it's all built around that, like, and it's great that certain aspects of it still exist.
Yeah, oh my God. Like, I was in a poker room the other night, and this is our local casino, but it's like 2 fist fights broke out separately at a poker game. You know, and one of them involved a dealer. And I'm just like, how, what, why? And then someone's there trying to film it. And I was just like, this is, you would expect this on the strip, but it's like, we're at the local casino. Like, why is this happening? You know?
I love that the dealer gets in on it as well. It's just
it's
I
like
mean,
it's absolutely crazy. Or bingo. We go to bingo a lot. And let me tell you, there's a scene at bingo. And if you like, I was at a game with an older woman who was very nice, but I don't know if she bought a lot of cards. Bingo has 13 games. She won 7 out of the 13 games. The dirty looks she was getting, I was sitting next to her, and I was like, security's going to have to escort you out of here. Like, people are really pissed that you're winning this much.
That's amazing. Do you know what? That's bingo across the world. I go sometimes with my mom, and I swear to God, they touch, everything is.
Yeah. Oh my God, it's intense.
How dare you? How dare you win?
My wife and I went last night, and like, I won one game, and then my wife won the next game, and like, people just were looking at us. It was very tense. You know, it was very, very tense scene. But it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. But you know, we're having a good time with it. But yeah, I could definitely see a few years where I'll just be over it. You know,
come here, look, enjoy the ride while you can.
Yeah.
Speaking of tens, we would love for you to take part, Glenn, in Quiz with Liz, if you were.
Let's do it.
Excellent. So yeah, it's just a quick few questions, a few either-ors, and a couple of random ones thrown in as well, just to get to know you a little bit better outside of how people may think they know you. Just know you a little bit better. So cool. Are we ready?
Yes, hit me.
Fabulous. Tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Cool. Christmas or Halloween?
gonna say Christmas.
Excellent. Spicy food, yay or nay?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I could elaborate, but I've got a problem there. Like, we got one of the Hot Ones subscription boxes,
Nice.
Yes.
and so now I walk into my pantry, and I just have like crates of hot sauce, and I'm like, I'm never gonna eat most of this, right? It's very weird. I don't understand heat for the sake of heat. Like, I like a little kick, but I want flavor. But you eat some of these things, and you're like, why? Why does this exist except to punish somebody or for them to eat on a dare? But I love good spicy food. But I think the spice industry is like kind of lost sight that flavor is the main driving purpose.
Yeah, that's hilarious. We need to get you on Hot Ones, I think.
Yes.
With all the water under the bridge, Glenn, Nintendo or Sega?
Oh God, I think Nintendo won in the long run.
Excellent. They played the long game.
Yes.
Most lethal cocktail you've ever had?
Was lethal cocktail? Oh, that's a good question. Trying to think. I mean, the Long Island iced tea is the standard for kind of sneaks up on you, right? At the time, you're like, oh, this is really tasty. Yeah. Now, people might not know this about me, given like my size and build, but I'm a massive lightweight. In fact, I had my first colonoscopy recently, and they had to put me under for that. And I had to explain to the anesthesiologist. I said, if you use the amount of drugs you think somebody that looks like me is going to need, you will kill me. So I can literally drink 2 beers and be fairly drunk. So for me, like, all alcohol is a little much, you know?
Excellent. Oh my God, that's brilliant. Tupac or Biggie Smalls?
I have to say Tupac.
Okay, fair enough. In wrestling, I'm pretty sure I know the answer. High flyers or storytellers?
Storytellers.
Yeah, definitely. If you could listen to one song for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Oh my God, that's a tough one. See, I think about things like this all the time, and I think about albums, and I think about bands. One song. I mean, you almost wonder, like, do you go for something? I guess you would want to go for something that was diverse, right? You would want to go for something like Green Day's Jesus of Suburbia, or something where you're like, okay, it's got all these different sections.
Yeah.
You know, because if you do something short, you're going to drive yourself mad.
That's it.
You know? But yeah, God, it would be so tough to pick one. That's an excellent question, but I mean, like, you could say like Don McLean's American Pie, like, that's good. That's a long song, you know, but yeah, yeah, I think any of them would drive me insane, but I'll pick Green Day's Jesus of Suburbia just because it changes a lot through it.
We'll take, exactly. Good choice. We'll take that. Tofu, overrated or no, I ate it?
Oh, no, I love tofu. It just depends on how you cook it, and most people cook it wrong. But you get a nice braise going, you get it, you know, a little crispy on the outside, and tofu is absolutely excellent.
Give that a try. Would you rather a personal maid or a personal chef?
Oh, what was that again?
Would you rather a personal maid or a personal chef?
Oh, I do cook a lot, so probably a maid. I think, you know, for my wife's sake, I think me having a personal maid would probably help alleviate a lot of her frustration with how cluttered I am.
Benefit both of you.
Yeah.
Favorite flavored beverage that's non-alcoholic?
Lately, I gotta say, like, fake peach flavor has really come a long way. So not just Alani, but like the Rock Zoa, the Zoa energy drink, the white peach is very good. Really? Like, I like a good peach flavor. That's been what's doing it for me lately. And gotta say, Ghost Energy drinks. They have like Sour Patch Kids and Bubblicious, like good variety of flavors. If you just want like a nice artificial flavor, you know? Yeah,
amazing. Yeah. My God. Would you rather live under the sea or in a whole new world?
I guess it depends on the world, right?
Well, Aladdin and Jasmine's, you know, I mean, it's bound to be good.
Oh, yeah. Well, specifically that one, sure, yes. Under the sea, I mean, pressurization. I mean, could I breathe water? You know, there's a lot of questions to be had with that.
But you've got a little talking crustacean with you, you know?
It's true.
I know, it's kind of potato.
Deep sea is terrifying. Like, forget about like the Titanic sub disaster recently, but just think, I mean, look at the movie The Meg. Like, we don't know everything that's down there.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. Scary shit. Yeah.
Stick with Aladdin and Jasmine, so just in
Yeah.
case. For one night only, would you reform headboard or perform with the Spice Girls?
Oh my God. Couldn't we find a way to do both? No, I did.
Headboard supports the Spice Girls.
Yeah, I did. We did reform headboard for one night only in 2012. That was okay. Actually, I felt an immense sense of closure for that. But no, performing with the Spice Girls, I went and saw Spice Wannabe, the Spice Girls tribute act at the Excalibur recently, and that was delightful. But yeah, I think no headboard opening for the Spice Girls. That would be, we technically once Dr. Dre and Eminem opened for us. So
well,
yeah.
Spice Girls should be looking you.
Yeah, absolutely. But no, I think that would be a hoot, as they say.
A hoot. Will Stacks whack Tony D?
Oh my God. See, I didn't like that swerve that they did where Stacks is the informant. I do think eventually like Tony D is gonna have Stacks like sleep with the fishes, much like two dimes,
Definitely. God bless it, 2 dimes.
Yes.
Vegas residency or Broadway show?
Oh God. Well, lately the Vegas residency, I think, is where it's at. And we did our share of Broadway. I think there was one year, the year that WWE Evolution happened. We figured it out, and for business and just travel, like we'd been to New York like 7 times in a year, including for Evolution. We went for like 36 hours. We just flew in. I think we saw like Mean Girls on Broadway that day, and then we went to WWE Evolution and then flew home. So I think that like I love Broadway and look forward to going again. But the Vegas residencies lately, I mean, that is a whole other game of just strange performances, because some of them are the Adeles and the Elton Johns of the world and Garth Brooks, and then some are Carrot Top or Rich Little or just random comedians. We went and saw John Travolta's niece had a show. Nicole Travolta had a show about her history in the spray tanning business and using that to get out of credit card debt. We saw that last Saturday night, and it was just so weird and quirky, but we're like, only in Las Vegas. Like, this was fantastic.
Like that one woman show from Friends, or
oh my gosh, yeah, it was a chapter 1, my first period or something.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love the weird, and I think Broadway has that too. We saw a show off Broadway that was about a group of teenage girls using a Ouija board to contact the ghost of drug lord Pablo Escobar. Like, we saw this off Broadway. Like,
I would love that.
Yeah. Broadway has some weird stuff too, but I think lately, I mean, I love that. I love the things that you see that you try and describe to people later, and you just can't believe that you actually saw that.
Yeah, amazing. I need to see that show. That sounds unbelievable. Yeah. Lead role in a box office bomb, or as extra in an Oscar-winning movie?
I think there would be something to be said. They talk about maximizing your minutes, right? In wrestling and on screen.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that being a lead in a bomb is one thing, but if you could be that guy or that girl, like I always point to Back to the Future 2, the one guy in the scene that's like, I think he took his wallet, and it's just like one line, everybody knows who that guy is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just in that one scene. I think having that one little moment, that would be worth it all.
Definitely, yeah. Quick spot in an Oscar winner, you can't beat it.
Yeah.
Who's the better rapper, Kendall Roy or G-Man?
I think I'm better than Kendall Roy.
I think you might be.
I'm a little out of practice, but I think I'm better. It's been a while.
G to the L-E. Amazing. One of the best things I've heard in my life aside from G-Man. Go to a concert with Monday Night Raj.
Yes.
Or a wrestling show with Issa.
I think I might get thrown out of the wrestling show with Issa. Like, I'll have to hold her back, right? Like, it could just go really bad, But with Raj, I mean, did you see Raj going to Taylor Swift lately, posting the bill what he spent to take his daughters to Taylor Swift? I'm like, I got to be hanging out with Raj more.
Right? Oh my God.
Maybe just some of that will rub off on me, right? But no, I Issa and I've met Raj in person. We've hung out in Las Vegas, but no, I'm looking forward to getting to go and spend more time with Issa, because that's just been just really meaningful and wonderful friendship that has grown in the last few years. So no, I'm very much looking forward to meeting her in person. But yeah, Raj and I'm going to be in Denver next month, and I'm going to see Raj, so I'm looking forward to that.
Amazing. So you can drop a few hints for the next concert.
Yeah, I know. I could be like, dude, come on, hook me up, man. Yeah.
Oh, Raj, what's the story?
He is living his best life. It's pretty nuts.
My God.
Yeah.
Speaking of the Queen, favorite Taylor Swift song?
Oh my God. I was a big fan of We're Never Getting Back Together. I think that's probably still my favorite. Although it's interesting. I mean, I'm really looking forward. Every time she does an album reissue, every time she does Taylor's version, I just look, I'm like, are we up to 1989 yet? Because that's my favorite of her records. Like, I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, definitely. She's absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
Final question, deal breaker. Becoming a published author or appearing on Quiz with Liz?
Well, I've already been a published author, so I've already been a published author. So I think Quiz with Liz. I mean, I think you got to beat it, you know?
Right. I know. I just didn't want to rush your answer. I know you knew what it was, but I just didn't want to put words in your mouth. But absolutely, Glenn, that was your Quiz with Liz. Thank you so much for taking.
Thank you.
Very insightful and a lot of thought gone into them answers. I kind of like them. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Before we let you go, you mentioned you're meeting up with Raj. Is this the reunion we've all been hoping for with Matt Morgan? Is this happening?
Stay tuned. Some emails and texts have been exchanged. We'll see where it goes. We're see if we can make something work.
We're really looking forward to it. We can't wait.
Yeah, definitely. I think it'd be nice. Yeah.
Love to see us back together again. And you're meeting up with Issa. Are you due to meet up with her? Will you be heading for WrestleMania next year in Philadelphia?
I don't think it'll be a WrestleMania. So she's been talking about just coming out to Las Vegas. And Alfred is 4 hours away in LA. So
yeah.
Hopefully we'll make something work sooner rather than later. And I've been telling them, I've been like, oh my God, I have this list of all these crazy places we're going to go and these dumb things we're going to do.
Yeah. She's fighting with the poker players.
Oh my God. Well, I mean, she's dropped some things on the podcast. I don't know if you remember recently, but just like food she's never eaten before. Things she's never done. So it's like, yeah, we got like this kind of good list going of fun experiences to have. But no, I think it'll be a really good time.
I think you need to vlog that trip.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure her and Alfred will be filming it all. So yeah, I don't even have a YouTube channel. So yeah, they'll have to chronicle all of that.
Amazing, unbelievable.
Glenn, been an absolute pleasure for having you on. Anything?
Yeah, thanks.
Anything coming up that we need to let the people know?
Wrestling Inc. podcast with Jeff Gerstmann on his Patreon, and yeah, just look for me. I'm out there. I'm easy to find.
Amazing. We'll leave the links in the description for that Patreon as well if anybody wants to go check it out.
Yeah, it sounds amazing.
Definitely will be checking that out. We want to know what's going on.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm going to need to be sat comfortably for that because I'm still not over the first story. So definitely, but it sounds amazing. As Jerry mentioned, a massive thank you to Glenn, our guest today. And if you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, what are you doing? It is at Wrestling8 on all social media as well. Make sure and like and comment down below. Let us know what you think of what Glenn's answers were for his quiz with Liz, and also some of the most off-the-wall stories we've ever heard. Love to have a bit of interaction and see what you think of Glenn's life experiences so far, because they're pretty out there. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, of course, you can find us Irish Wrestling Entertainment. And if you head over to TikTok, you will find millions and millions of views. So make sure that yours is going to add on to that as well. I have been Sensational Queen Liz, your host for today. This is Booker G 5 times and the one and only Glenn Rubenstein. Thank you so much. And we'll see you all again soon. Bye for now.
Bye, guys.